Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Gavin, and over the last couple of weeks we've gotten quite a few new subscribers. So to you newbies, thank you so much for subscribing. I really appreciate it. I hope you will enjoy joining my merry little band of web sleuths and true crime aficionados. Hope you really like what you see and that you'll stick around. Today we're actually getting into the case of Shelby Jean Thornburg Crocker, the 20-year-old Houston, Texas woman who was murdered in her own apartment. Most of the time online she is called Shelby Thornburg. So I think I'm going to stick to calling her that because I think if I do, the algorithms that run the internet will get this video in front of more people. And eyeballs are what we need in this case because we actually have a chance to solve this one. The biggest piece of evidence that police have in this case is actual footage of the person they believe murdered Shelby Thornburg. So if we can get more eyeballs on this video, the better chance that Houston PD will have to get that person identified. Now, there are actually quite a few videos on Shelby Thornburg already. Most of them just tell the story of her murder. What I think is going to make this video stand out, at least I hope, is that I've been working with Shelby's sister, her name is Christina Scott, for about the last 6 months, and we've been requesting records, we've been digging into things, and we've uncovered some information that hasn't gotten out there yet that I think is really going to help. I also want to go over some of the crime scene photos because I think there are some clues in there that will help us find Shelby's killer. And I've also been in touch with the lead detective on this case, and while he doesn't have permission to comment about it publicly, he has pointed me in the right direction on a couple of things. So stick around and we will get into the murder of Shelby Jean Thornburg Crocker. I want to start off by saying that Shelby was a sex worker. I just want to get that out of the way. She told her family that she was an escort. Police called her a prostitute. Whatever you want to call it, Shelby was doing very risky things. But that's not to say that it was her fault what happened to her. It definitely wasn't. And I have a soft spot for people who operate on the margins of society because when something bad like this happens, they're the ones that are the most marginalized, the ones that people say, well, she shouldn't have been doing that, or if you mess with the bull, you get the horns. It's like they become victimized twice. But I think maybe the best thing for us to do starting out is let's listen to what Christina had to say about what may have led Shelby in her life to where she ultimately ended up.
Well, to start with, our life was really good. Mama was done real well with us. It wasn't until I was about 7 or 8 years old, maybe. And Mama started going downhill, looking for her pills, trying to find her next tie, going in and out of hospitals, not really taking care of us. And then once I got about 8, 9 years old, we moved to a little town called Jacksboro, Texas. And that's when things really, really started going downhill for Mama. Mama would always be high on pills, sleeping in, dodging CPS, Child Protective Services. We never stayed in one place for too long because Mama always was running from Child Protective Services. And down there in Jacksboro, that's when I really realized I had to step up and try taking care of my sister being 8, 9 years old, and she's only 6 and 7 years old. So I would go out and cut people's grasses for $20 a yard. Even if they were 5 acres, it was $20, just so I could make sure that my sister had food on her stomach or had water or had light, just to make sure my sister was taken care of. Mama was going in and out of hospitals yet again. My landlord started molesting me. We went to another house out in the country down by Graham Lake, and that's when when the first time we actually got taken away because Mama went through electric shock therapy, they sent Mama home in a taxi cab, not knowing who her name was, not knowing who we were, not even knowing where she lived. And it was like a day or two later, Child Protective Services come in and told Mama she had 48 hours to get the house cleaned up or they were taking us. Mama told them, well, go ahead and take them. They're going to give me an anxiety attack trying to get them to clean the house. So that morning, Mama had told us that if they got the truck running, they would come pick us up from school. So that afternoon, I get called into the office, and I'm thinking, okay, well, Mama's on her way to come pick us up, like they got the truck running. Well, then the counselor takes me into the office and starts talking to me and was asking me questions like, what would you do if you got placed in foster care? What would happen if you and your sister were sent away from your mom and possibly put in separate homes? I told him, I said, I really don't have an answer for that. Like, why are you asking these questions? I have no reason. I do remember telling them at one point when they kept pounding me that I would probably go off. And I would think I was in the 7th grade. And no, I wasn't. I was like in the 6th grade, 5th or 6th grade. I was young. Well, then a cop and a CPS worker walked in, and they told me that we were being placed in foster care, that my sister was out in the car. Well, I start freaking out. I'm losing it. They take us to this office in Graham. They find us because we have no clothes. They took us straight from school. They find us a few little outfits. They take us down to Wichita Falls and place us into a group foster home. And this was actually like a big children's home. It had multiple girls to one room, multiple boys to one room. On separate halls, you had one mingling place, the living quarters, the kitchen where you ate. It was awful. I got molested yet again in there by one of the teenagers that was in there. Then my aunt got us. We were living with my aunt for like a year or so. My biological father, Robert Thornburg, ended up getting out of prison. And he ended up somehow, I don't know, really getting me and my sister. And that's when really things started changing for Shelby. Like, I made sure Shelby was taken care of, but when Robert got a hold of us, Robert started raping me and feeding me all these lies. I don't know this man. I've only met him like maybe 3 or 4 times in my entire life. So I don't know who this man is. But then he starts raping me, and I finally get pregnant with my son. I leave, and then that's when he started prostituting my sister out. She ended up pregnant with my nephew.
I think it's pretty clear from what we just heard from Christina that her life with Shelby when they were young was pretty rough. They were abandoned, they were passed around, they were abused. They got pregnant young, and at a very young age, Shelby was prostituted out by somebody she should have been able to trust. Now, in about 2013, Shelby, who had struggled with her weight her whole life, began to get serious about dropping that weight, about getting healthy. And so, over the course of about a year and a half, she lost over 100 pounds. She looked and felt healthy, and maybe for the first time in her life, she felt pretty. And it was about this time that she moved to Texas. According to court records, Shelby Thornburg was picked up for prostitution for the first time in April of 2014 in Dallas County, Texas. She pleaded no contest to the charges and was sentenced to 33 days in county jail and had to pay $412 in court costs. Then in June of 2015, she was picked up once again for prostitution, this time in Harris County, Texas, which is in the Houston area. Her case was ultimately dismissed in October of 2015, just about a month and a half before her death, because a witness didn't show up for court. Now, I asked Houston PD about this and was told that it's not uncommon for arresting officers to not show up for court proceedings. But when I talked to Christina about this, she had a different theory.
Shelby had said that she was working with a lawyer to get that charge dropped. My speculation was that she was working with the police and ratting out other rings around her, because right before Shelby was killed, there was a big prostitution ring that was busted in her area. And then after she got killed, like a day or two later, so not very long after, there was another prostitution ring that got busted in her area. So I just pretty much, with her telling me that she was getting that charge dropped, pretty much come to the assumption that she was working with the police to have these charges dropped, because a second offense it's not as easy as the first, and the third is not as easy as the second. So she was probably would have been looking at jail time for that second bust.
This is a theory that I've heard from another one of Shelby's family members. The idea is that Shelby Thornburg was working as a police informant to help them infiltrate the many prostitution rings in the Houston area. And if this is true, then her pimp, or maybe a competing pimp, would have motive to get rid of her. So let's take a look at her pimp, shall we? He's a guy named Marcus Dwayne Johnson. He goes by Mark D. And to my knowledge, he's still in the Houston area because he has a pending court proceeding. His criminal record is long, mostly having to do with dealing cocaine and, shocker on this one, promotion of prostitution, also known as pimping. But when I look at Shelby's Facebook account, he doesn't look like her pimp at all. To my eye, he actually looks like her boyfriend.
Well, to start with, not knowing what was really going on behind closed doors, I had an assumption that was actually her boyfriend because of the way she talks about him. But come to find out, after talking to these girls after Shelby was killed, she wasn't nothing more than a piece of money to him. She was being used constantly by him, and if she didn't make money, then she got beat or whatever the case may have been. She never got the luxury of actually having that boyfriend from him. It was always an abusive relationship. And using her, telling her, you're going to do this and you're going to do that. You're going to do what I say, when I say, and how I say, or I'm just going to beat the out of you.
As I was researching this case, I came across a term that I hadn't known before. The term is bottom girl. Now, Wikipedia says a bottom girl is a term for a prostitute who sits atop the hierarchy of prostitutes working for a particular pimp. A bottom girl is usually the prostitute who has been with the pimp the longest and consistently makes the most money. Being the bottom girl gives the prostitute status and power over the other women working for the pimp.
That was definitely Shelby. Like, he had girls up under Shelby that Shelby was training. And no, not for very long, because Shelby didn't get along real well with other women, but long enough to say, okay, well, these are the ropes, this is how you got to do it, this is what you got to do, or you're going to just find yourself beat. I've talked to numerous girls, and a couple of them, for instance, have told me that there was one time where Shelby was in the passenger seat of his Range Rover. He leaned over and opened the window or opened the door and kicked Shelby out and then tried running her over. When we had grandmother's surprise birthday party in 2015, the year that my sister was killed, Shelby had come down with a black eye and bruises on her arm like she had grabbed her. But Shelby just told me, "Oh, it's nothing. Well, you can clearly see the fingerprints on her arms.
I talked with one of Mark D's former girls who did not want to go on camera, but she did confirm to me that Shelby was in charge of the girls. So while it may have appeared on Facebook that she was Mark D's girlfriend, the reality is Shelby Thornburg was Mark D's bottom girl. And that begs the question, if Shelby was indeed a police informant and that's the reason that her case got dismissed, if Mark D found out about it, could he have killed her? Now, police say he had an alibi, so he's been cleared. But I think it's possible that that man that we watch on that video calmly walking into and out of Shelby Thornburg's apartment building could have been a hired hitman. I mean, he has the look, right? I mean, that guy looks military. He looks like a hitman in cargo shorts. Okay, let's get into the day Shelby died. Apparently, she had a date arranged by Mark D with a John at her apartment. All of the arrangements were made by phone. Police later found out that the phone the John used was a burner phone that had been paid for in cash months prior. There was no security footage. There was nothing. It was a dead end. Shelby's apartment was on the 3rd floor of the Conquistador apartment buildings. Now, this is a building that looks like an old hotel, which was then converted to apartments, and it's in a pretty bad part of town. This is what the floor plan looks like. You can see that Shelby had a twin bed on the floor out in the living room. Now, this wasn't the bed she slept in. That was in her bedroom. This twin bed was where she conducted business. Her John arrived at the Conquistador lobby at about 8:34 p.m. We know that he sat down at a couch, presumably to wait for Shelby. We don't know what time she either came down to get him or he went upstairs by himself, because that part of the video has been edited out by the Houston PD. But what we do know is that Shelby sent a text to Mark D at 8:40 p.m. She texted the word good, G-U-D, which was a code word that they used to let Mark know that everything was okay. So I think it's safe to assume that the John was inside Shelby's apartment by 8:40. At 8:56 p.m., the John is seen exiting the elevator and leaving the building. So he was in the building a total of 22 minutes. I think it's safe to assume that he was in Shelby's apartment probably 16 to 18 minutes. During the 22 minutes that he was in that building, he crossed the lobby, sat on a couch to wait for Shelby, went up the elevator and into her apartment, where they negotiated. He got undressed, they had sex, and then he slit her throat with a large knife. He then got dressed, went back down the elevator, and he casually strolled out of the lobby. The Houston PD has said publicly that they worked with FBI profilers who have determined that Shelby Thornburg's killer was likely a serial killer. And I hate to disagree with the FBI. I'm an amateur. I have no investigative experience whatsoever, and I haven't looked at all the evidence because they won't let us look at that evidence, right? But my gut here tells me this was a hit, and I have 2 reasons for feeling that way. Number 1, I think a serial killer would have stayed to enjoy the moment a little bit longer than 16 to 18 minutes. A 16 to 18 minute time frame to me just screams this is a job. Get in there and get it done. And the second thing is the manner in which he killed her. Let's look at some crime scene photos, and then I want to read to you part of the autopsy report. Now, I've blurred out part of this to protect Christina, but what you're seeing here is Shelby laying face down across the bed in her living room with her head hanging between it and the couch. What police say happened was that Shelby was kneeling on the bed and her killer from behind reached around with his right hand with a long, sharp knife and pulled that knife with enough force that it cut through all the soft tissues and into her spine. As he completed the motion, blood cast off of the knife and onto the wall. Shelby then fell forward and bled out of her neck onto the floor. She almost certainly lost consciousness immediately and was dead within moments. Now, here's what the autopsy report says about that wound. An incised wound of the anterior neck. A large gaping incised wound extends horizontally across the anterior neck. The wound measures 5 1/2 inches in length and is located 9 1/2 inches below the top of the head and 2 inches to the right of the anterior midline. The margins of the wound are sharp with no ragged edges or serrations. No tissue bridging is observed. A 1-inch linear abrasion extends from the lower left margin of the wound, transversing obliquely from the 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock. A 3/4 inch linear abrasion extends from the upper right margin of the wound obliquely from 4 to 10 o'clock. A 1/4 inch linear abrasion extends obliquely from the upper midpoint skin margin of the wound from 4 o'clock to 10 o'clock. A subsequent internal examination of the neck reveals that the wound tract incises the clavicular head of the left sternocleidomastoid muscle and transects the sternal head of the left sternocleidomastoid muscle, incises the left jugular vein, punctures the left carotid artery, transects the bilateral sternothyroid and sternohyoid muscles, the trachea, and the esophagus, transects the right sternocleidomastoid and omohyoid muscles, and transects the right vertebral artery, right carotid artery, and right jugular vein. At least 4 sharp injury paths extend through the soft tissue and on the C3 through C5 vertebral bodies. The approximate depth of the injury is 2 1/2 inches, and the ends are sharp. Okay, so there were a lot of long words in that report, and I think I'm going to try to invite Dr. Kenneth Clark back onto the program to go over what it is that just said. So if you haven't subscribed, please do so that you know when I get Kenny back on and we can discuss that. But if you have any questions or comments about what I read, if you understand it and have input on it, I'm really interested to know what you think. So please put that in the comments section below. Also, getting back to whether the killer was a serial killer or possibly a hitman, I'm still leaning hitman, but I want to know what you think. So put that in the comments section below as well. The crime scene photos are actually pretty hard to look at. There's a lot of blood and not a lot to go on. But I do want to stop at this photo because I want to point out that the Houston PD was able to get a lot of biological samples from Shelby's body. My understanding is there were about 17 items that they either tape lifted or swabbed from her back, her buttocks, her left wrist, and from multiple locations of the front and back of her body. There were also swabs from her hands, knees, thighs, vagina, anus, and mouth. I'm told that the Houston PD was able to amplify DNA from one of the samples that they took from Shelby's body. They submitted it to CODIS, and so far they don't have any hits. They have not done genetic genealogy in this case. I'm told that's because they don't have the budget for it.
Yeah, but then Paul Holes and them offered to pay for that, and they denied that.
They didn't accept. So Paul Holes offered to pay to do more DNA testing, and Houston PD said no?
Yeah.
By the way, if you're interested why the same DNA profile that is submitted to CODIS can't be just uploaded to GEDmatch for genetic genealogy, I did an interview on that with a friend of mine who's a professor of genetics and genomics and advanced biology at Penn State. That video will be coming out very soon, so please be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you know when that comes out. So that is the story, at least so far, of the murder of Shelby Thornburg. This one is baffling to me why it can't be solved. We have DNA that has been uploaded to CODIS. We have enough samples to amplify DNA to upload to GEDmatch. We have video of the killer going into and out of Shelby's apartment. I think in order to get this case solved, there needs to be two things that happen. First, Houston PD needs to have incentive to do that genetic genealogy. And I think the only way that they're going to do that is if they feel public pressure. So if you feel so inclined to join Christina and me and other members of the family and her friends, please call the Houston PD's homicide leadership and demand that they do that. The other thing that needs to happen is we need to get her killer's video, this video of him casually walking into and out of Shelby's apartment building in front of more people. The more people that see this video, the more likely somebody is going to recognize her killer. If you are that somebody, please contact Houston Crime Stoppers at this number and give them that lead. I have two more videos that I'm planning on doing on Shelby's case. In one of them, I'm going to be doing a live Q&A with Christina Scott, Shelby's sister. So please subscribe and ring the bell so that you'll be notified when we do that. I think that a lot of you will have a lot of questions, and I'm looking forward to that. In the meantime, there are still a lot of cases that I'm working on. I've got at least one more video on the case of Amanda Winkowski. And I've got a video that I'm doing on the bizarre death of Father Joseph Moreno. I've been working with his twin sister on that one. We have a lot of documentation, a lot of stuff to go through and investigate. And oddly enough, Father Joe was Amanda Winkowski's priest. He also was killed on the east side. I'll also be continuing my investigation into the death of Rochelle Brinson. So please subscribe. With that, I bid you adieu, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe to my channel. And if you have any comments or questions, please leave them below.